Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Coding Adda. So today we'll go through Kubernetes blue-green deployment. So I'm not going into the the basics of Kubernetes here. So we'll just go with the practical demonstration of how to implement this blue-green deployment, right? So this is one of a strategy that we can used while deploying our application, right? Correct. So let me just uh, explain you things. So I'm hoping that uh, you guys already aware of the Kubernetes services, then deployment, then replica set, and the pods. So I'm not going into that much detail over here. So here, from the I mean, from the whenever you want to deploy your application onto a production system, then you need to be sure that whatever you are deploying, it should not affect your application, right? And you need to be sure into that, right? So in that sense, we have a strategy called blue green strategy where what we do eventually we'll deploy the exact similar replica set of your production. I mean, whatever deployment is running, so the same deployment stack will deploy, right? So at a same time we have a two running copies of the code. In one we have a, we can say it as a v1, and other one is v2, that is a new version that we need to deploy, right? And what we actually do, we actually move the traffic from old version to new version, and if everything works fine, we'll use this version, and we'll remove these pods, or we remove this deployment, right? The earlier deployment. And if after moving a traffic, if we found something is wrong, then we just easily switch back to a old version and just remove this new set of pods and do the changes, or see, I mean, why this is failing, fix those, and then do the same strategy again. So let's quickly jump to demo. Okay. So what I did as a part of this demo, I created one very basic application. I mean, it's in normal HTML. I'm saying this is a blue version. This is a initial version of the application, and the other one is the file with the green version of the deployment. And I created a Docker file for these blue and for the green one, right? So as I already pushed those Docker images to my Docker registry, right? So this is a green version and this is blue version, right? And now how we actually going to decide, I mean, which deployment we need to pick. So that is happened through the service, right? So because from service is actually going in the service, we actually need to decide, I mean, which port selector we need to use, right? So here, if I go and show you the show you the deployment file for the blue app. So what I did here is I'm specifying this is a deployment, kind is deployment, and the name is this, and this is a label. And here, if you see, in the spec, we actually need to define the pod template, where we are actually defining the name of the pod is my app pod, and in the label these are custom things. So here what I did is I defined the version as blue, right? And in the selector I also mentioned the version as blue. These are the selector for your deployment file, like, so deployment refer to the blue, I mean the blue version, that is these are the pods, right? And this is my container image, right? And in the green version it's almost similar, it's just that I change the version of the pods as green, right? So if we go back to the diagram, so these are the pods with the blue, right? Because I marked these ports as labeled as blue and these as green. So I mean very simple, right? So what we will do initially, let's spin up a blue deployment first, right? So kubectl apply -f and then Kubernetes YML. Let's deploy blue version. See now it's just running, right? Okay, so blue is created. Let's see. Get pods. Right. So if you see here, you will find the container is creating, right, for this one. Let's see. Okay, so container is running for this. Now I have a service where what I did in the service is I have created a load balancer type of service, and where I'm saying the target port is 80 because the nginx is exposed to a target port 80, right, container port, and the port uh, is the service port, right, and the node port. Even though if you can omit this one, I mean this is not ready because you are creating a load balancer type of service, right? Here the interesting thing is, here you need to define like which pod you need to select here. So what I'm giving here is version is blue, right? So version is blue and the app is my app, right? So this is what I selected here, right? So if I just go and qctl get apply f Kubernetes YAML and application hyphen service YAML. So see now what happened. So we have the service created. Services. Oh, the command, right? So here if you see the external IP is pending because the load balancer type of service, if we create a load balancer service, it would get exposed to the external world, right? So that is why this IP is pending. Let's, it would take some time to generate the external IP. So now the external IP is available, right? So if I copy this and if I go here and if I try to run this, should show the blue version of your application, right? Correct. It will take a little time because loading this for the first time, and I have created a cluster, very small cluster, right? So now this is working, right? So this is the blue version of the deployment, right? So this is working, correct. So uh, now what we need to do, we need to deploy a v2 version of our application, right? And we need to switch a traffic, right? So now what we will do, we'll first spin up the deployment set for the green deployment, right? So what we need to do here is we just need to green version of deployment, right? We have applied this, right? So if you go and see, you will find out that, see, this green deployment is creating a pod, right? So now I have a two pods. One is a blue pod for the blue deployment, other one is for the green deployment, right? So these two are running, right? But right now if I just go and refresh the page, it will show the blue version because I haven't redirected the traffic, right? Because service is still pointing to the blue version, right? So now let me change this to green. Now when I run this, it actually update the service, right? Okay, so I did that. Now if I go and why, you will see this would remain same and the version will become a green, right? Earlier, if you go, we have a version as blue, right? So now, ideally, what happened internally? This service, this pointing has been removed, and now all the traffic is going to the new set of pod, right? We are calling this as a green pod, or maybe you can say it as a V1 or a V2. That all depend on how you have written your Kubernetes YAML files, right? So now, as we modified this and this has been configured because service is already there, we just modified the thing, right? So ideally, it should show the green version of it. See, this is a green version of it. So we will perform the testing whatsoever we need to do onto this green deployment, and if something is failing, we just need to do a switch, right? I mean, we just need to go and switch this to blue, and it should be good after running this, right? So it should again go back to the previous state, right? So this is how I mean, this is how simple it is this, right? We go back to the previous version, right? And if everything goes fine, we can just go and delete hyphen f. We can just run the particular that, let's suppose blue is now the final version, right? So let's just, if we want to delete, we can just easily delete the green, and we can just specify like whichever version we don't need, we just delete that, right? So if I see, there is only one pod running, right? See, this is a demo for this one, and for this, I'm not going into much detail. I'm using a Google Cloud Kubernetes engine for this, for the Kubernetes cluster. So I created that, and I'll be creating a separate video on how to create a cluster. Although it would be very easy, but just want to show you in this demo cluster. If you see, you will find the services. So this is the application LB service that we have created, and this is a IP address. See, this is matching. And if I go here, so you will actually see the workloads, right? Okay. In the cluster, if you go to this one, you will actually see the nodes, and onto the nodes I have two nodes, and I have running one cluster in it. So in either of, in any one of this, the pod should be running, right? So here my app deployment blue is running, right? And if I go back and show you the other node, the pod would not be there, right? So ideally, it's not recommendable. We ideally need to increase. Where in the production workload, we ideally use more number of replicas, might be three or more, right? So just for demo purpose, I have a one. I create a one replica for this application. If you like